And let me double check the YouTube. There we go, live now. And I'll pop out chat. Okay. So how are you guys doing?
Doing all right.
Doing good over here. Surviving the apocalypse.
Are restaurants open, Clint and Yuma?
They are. They opened. They're opening slowly. Unlike some states, they don't have to actually write. I don't know if you saw that, but Washington State, they're requiring their restaurant owners to keep a list of everyone who comes into their restaurant.
Oh, contact tracing.
Contact tracing.
Yeah.
Smart. I noticed when I went to the grocery store yesterday, I think 1 out of 10 people were wearing a mask, and I think Arizona's just decided, now we're in it. We're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
Notice that the more affluent neighborhoods in Seattle pretend like they're immune. So they're not social distancing, not wearing masks, crowding at the beach, even with like baby strollers and stuff.
Huh.
So I hope that works out for them.
Yeah, for real.
All right. So with that, welcome everyone to another episode of SEO Fight Club. I am slightly changing the format in response to some viewer feedback, so we'll give it a go. The idea is to head more towards the lesson type episodes in general. Won't be 100%. We'll obviously have some exemptions to that from time to time, but we're going to try and work in more lessons because that seems to be what people want, is to walk away with something they can use in hand. What do you guys think about that direction shift?
I like doing lessons. I like doing site audits. I like teaching, and it's, it helps me relearn other things too at the same time. So I like doing it.
All right.
Yeah, I figure, it doesn't always have to be, egghead nerd nonsense all the time. We can go back to some basics. We can go back to some cool tactics. And so that's kind of what we're doing. But we'll get through the boilerplate. So want to say congratulations to Mike Sale, Saeed Zihan, and Lauren Proctor. They won our first IMG contest, and they each got a month of free Cora Lite. So congratulations to them. Kyle, what's on the plan for our next contest? When will that come, roughly?
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're going to do it the same kind of thing. So beginning of June, just like we did with the May 4th one. And there's going to be a prize from Pop, a prize from Magic PR, and a prize from Ranking Factory.
So how many total winners?
9.
9 people are going to walk away with some goods from this next contest. So to be ready for it, all you have to do is have a free IMG account or better, and you have to complete your profile, including the avatar pic. And when the contest is announced in the group, you just have to comment on it to enter. So be sure you do that. Jordan Pierce mentions he loves how he watched a Wix ad before jumping on. Well, we got to pay for Ted's beer somehow, and in about 6 to 8 months, I'll be able to do that. So, woohoo! So this week in IMG, we got tomorrow the test review with Lee, so that's going to be totally awesome. We have some changes to testing happening there, so if you are involved with our testing, we'll maybe discuss that in IMG and at that review. Friday Pro Tips. Kyle, what's in the Pro Tips?
So new feature, there are 2 videos up now on pro tips that I've done. We've got several scheduled from myself, other experts. I think you've got a couple that are going to be coming up in next month or month after. So yeah, check them out. They get posted every Friday. They're video tips. They're fun. They're kind of interactive so that we explain it. It's also a short video, like 2 minutes, 3 minutes. So it's a quick tip that you can kind of take into the weekend and think about and play with.
So it's another lesson type thing.
That's right.
Excellent. Monday updates. If you've been tracking these Google updates, which who hasn't, Monday updates is where I kind of dive in deep when appropriate. I go over things you need to look out for and things that have already happened and give you analysis of the data. And so that's what Monday updates is about. Next week, there's a hangout with Ted. We were calling it an AMA, and now there's a bunch of fear about being sued by Reddit.
It'll be called Ask the Expert.
Ask the Expert. Well, it's really, on mine, both Kyle and I alternate on doing these. On Kyle's, it's kind of like an Ask Kyle Anything, where Kyle's the big head on the screen and you throw questions at Kyle. At my event, it's more of like a group discussion. I bring, there's typically only, 6 or 7 people there anyway. So I just make everybody presenter and we just have a big panel discussion on a lot of different topics. So, they're cool events. So you should check those out. And then, of course, next Wednesday, we're back at Fight Club. So that's what's on the calendar. And of course, if you're looking for something to do while being stuck at home, I highly recommend investing in yourself. And we have a number of courses where you could help support the community and learn something new. And even if it's not our courses, I recommend you do, some self-improvement anyway. Clint, you have courses too. Where can people learn about your courses?
Mine is at whatranks.com. It's a core course. Get me back into teaching. I got on page, off page, and schema coming.
So I highly recommend, whether it's our courses or not, you always try to learn something new and better your situation forever going forward.
Yeah. The one I would recommend on that list there is Robbie's. I'm in the whole playbook. I have the whole thing. Robbie's course is awesome.
Yeah. People have been saying great things about that course. So definitely check it out. So we couldn't have an episode without talking about the elephant in everybody's room. So the key thing to note about the update is we finally went back to baseline. It took like 30 days of rollout activity to finally get back to something that looks like the end of an update. And then, of course, if you see this light green line, it peaked out at 60 again. So it looks like Google's tweaking something or maybe rolling something back. You see the hints of things starting to turn upwards again. So, expect some aftershocks. We're kind of bracing for it, but they tend to be smaller than the core update, but it looks like we have an aftershock coming. We polled our community. We said, hey, did your primary sites go up a lot, up a little, no change, down a little, down a lot? Tell us what you're seeing. And about 60% of the people who responded to that inquiry were saying, hey, I'm kind of hit. But what's really cool in this thread, this poll is in IMG free, is all the people who commented on it told about what kinds of sites were hit, how they were hit, or, what's working well for them, what they think is going on with it. So we have this long thread of anecdotal stories of what's going on with this. And then, of course, in addition to that, in the premium content, we have my whole first impression of the May core update. So if you're a premium member and you want to find out, what does it, look like is packed into this update, what can we do to mitigate it? We have my first impression analysis in there. And in a few weeks, we'll probably bring a lot of that out into the public. But right now, it's a premium feature. If you want to help support the work we do and the content we make, and you want to get that mitigation advice, then join premium. We thank you for that because you make all of this possible. So, Clint, what can people expect on SEO this week?
This week it was kind of weak in the in the news sense. So I got a good video on there from Cyrus Shepard on keyword research, and then a tool to help pull your images. If you got content teams that are sending you images in a Word doc or a Google Doc and stuff, there's some steps to go through that process to pull those images out properly. And then to round it out with answering, because last week's episode was on writing schema, and a lot of people loved it, but they all pointed out that I missed out on the implementation, how to actually get it on the website. So I went over some ways to put it on websites, be it WordPress or not. And then I showed off a tool to help with the dreaded comma and closing brackets errors. That was like a life changer for me. I actually fought with the schema for 2 days, and then one of my clients happens to be a JSON author. I told him my issue, and he's like, "Oh, use this," and it was fixed in 10 minutes. So it's I shared that tool. Hopefully, it save everyone the drama in that. So. And then we're actually transitioning SEO this week as well, too, just like you are for Fight Club. We're bringing in more lessons, more topics, and just kind of get me back in the teaching mode since it's been forever. I did a course, and the next week it looks like we're going to do site structure.
Very cool. All right. So with that, I'll ask you guys to turn off your camera.
We need to keep our mics on so that Remo doesn't freak out, just FYI.
Yep.
Yeah, feel free to leave the mic on and to comment and interrupt as you feel it's needed. So.
And Ted, I would just note that took 12 minutes.
Okay, so it's a short lesson today, so I think we're okay. All right, so today we're going to go over some simple diagnostics. Those little tricks you can do when you're sitting next to a client and they ask you a question that you need to figure out the answer for right then and there in front of them. So these are kind of the things that you run into a lot of the time, and if you can hammer it out in front of the client, you often look like a rock star. And if you can't, you end up saying things like, well, I'll have to look into it and get back to you shortly, which is also okay, but it isn't as cool as being able to, match some keys and come back with an answer, which is, really rock star. So the types of things we're going to look at are, things like, is a site indexed at all? Does my site wildcard subdomains, which can cause a whole class of problems? Is my URL indexed at all? Does Google index any backlinks for my website? And do backlinks for my specific URL exist? So these are examples of simple diagnostics This is, for a lot of people, a basic lesson, but it's always good to review those basics, even if you think you know them. So, is my site indexed at all? And for this, we use the site colon operator in Google search. And I know a lot of these search operators, people say in chat, it's not authoritative. Google says don't trust it. But yet Google doesn't get rid of them. The reason they don't get rid of these different operators is that they're not authoritative. They were never meant to be authoritative. They're diagnostic in nature. They tell you something interesting because they produce a result. It's not that they give you the complete set of results. So with this, you basically do the site colon operator with a domain name. And if you see the pages show up at all, any results indicates a yes. Is my site indexed at all? And if there's no results, if you get no results found, then it's a no.
Ted, do you know if there's any rhyme or reason to the amount of URLs that they will show from a site?
Well, it'll vary for several things. So if it's a brand new site, it may have only fetched and rendered like a page or, a few pages. It just hasn't been crawled yet. If it's an old site, there could be technical SEO issues. You might have robots.txt blocking things. You may have a technical issue in Google Search Console where if you remove the home page and during development, it'll actually de-index the whole website. But if you remove sub pages, it'll only remove those, but it'll leave the others. So there's a lot of scenarios that can get different outcomes. But if you're generally wondering, has Google indexed it at all, this is usually the go-to test. Does my site wildcard domains? And so what does that mean? Some websites can be configured to have subdomains, and they could be things like www.domain.com or shop.domain.com or blog.domain.com. They could even be wildcarded for members if it's, a content site that has user-generated content. It might be brand.domain.com or username.domain.com or things of that nature. The danger of having wildcarded subdomains is that a lot of the time when people try to set it up, they set it up incorrectly, and any subdomain will show the main website's URLs. And if that's the case, then people can invent URLs for content. They can link build to those invented URLs to outrank the main content on the main URL. And once they've done that, they can pull the backlinks away from those subdomains and effectively de-index your main content for a time. And so one way around that, one way to mitigate that is to properly canonicalize your pages. So if you're not using your canonical tag properly, then you open up this whole class of negative SEO attack if you have this problem. There are other ways to do it too without subdomains. But another potential issue is that your subdomains will cannibalize your keywords. We see this most frequently with the blog dot scenario with an online retailer, where the blog posts are cannibalizing the opportunity away from product pages and category pages. And so oftentimes when I start an engagement, I like to see what subdomains they're working with. at which point I want to do this diagnostic. Have you guys encountered any of those types of issues?
I'm not even smart enough to know how to look for it, so this is good for me.
Yeah, so basically you can use the star operator to show what subdomain URLs are listed. And I think I have an example. So here I'm doing the site :star.greatergood.com, and I'm saying -blog and -store because I know about those two. But check this out. Their test server is cannibalizing.
Hot diggity dog costume.
So all of a sudden, you can do all kinds of cool things like, did they leave the test server running? Do they have other subdomains for other purposes that are cannibalizing? So it's a pretty useful trick. Is my URL indexed at all? So we use the in-URL operator, which demands that the keywords be in URL. And this way we put in the whole URL that we're interested in, and that'll tell us. So let's look at an example of this. It'll make more sense. So in URL, I'm using my own website here, and I want this whole string to be in the URL, and it is the whole URL of my documentation page. So by doing this, I can see that my documentation page is indexed in Google.
I like to use that during tests, like when you're playing with the new page. It's like, is this even been crawled?
Yeah. Does Google know about this? So this is a cool way to see if a specific URL is indexed. So does Google index any backlinks for my site? So here we're going to use the link operator. This one is the most notorious for people saying it's absolute garbage. Don't use it. It doesn't tell you all your links. Again, it's not supposed to tell you all your links. It's supposed to be diagnostic. Do you get credit for any links at all? AKA the Google sandbox that Google says doesn't exist. You can empirically test for it. If you get credit for 0 links, you are in the sandbox. So doing this test is diagnostic if you're in that state. And that state has evolved. It used to be you would not get credit for backlinks for up to 10 months on a new website. It's nowhere near that bad now. But there is some time involved with new sites or penalized websites. And so this is a cool diagnostic check.
Do you think there's anything to the order that they put the links in?
You mean whether the link operator comes before the minus site?
No, I'm sorry. I meant the like the links that are shown. Do you think it's telling you that LinkedIn one is your strongest one or one of your strongest ones?
Google has claimed that it's not, that it's just a representative sample of all quality of links.
The interesting thing is, though, because we know that they're search results and they order search results by something.
Yeah, but generally I think the algorithm largely goes out the window when you start using these.
Cool.
So I wouldn't try to read too much into it other than it's diagnostic. Am I getting credit for backlinks at all or not at all? And based on that, what can I infer? Is there something else to be learned? Possibly, but I don't know that I've learned that yet. So I'd be interested to learn what you know along those lines.
Well, you could run that search request on your competition, and if you're in the camp where all your backlinks have to be indexed, now you have essentially a list, right, of in your market sites that are getting indexed, that are offering backlinks, and you can duplicate that link profile.
Because you could also use the anchor text there too for part of the search.
Yep, exactly. That'd be good. Or even it gives you, instead of hunting and pecking through like Moz or Majestic, you can pull all the anchors out of there using a tool like Scrapebox or something. Pull all those sites out, find the anchor text, and get a true anchor text ratio that Google's looking for.
Yeah, and so the way this trick works is we're looking for pages that link to this domain, but we're excluding pages that are from that domain, so we don't include any of the internal links. We only want the external links. And that's why this is a 2-parameter setup to get those external links. And typically, I'll have somebody say, hey, my website is having trouble ranking on Google, or, something like that. I'm having a hard time with this page. So I just want to see if you're in good standing in a very basic sense with Google in terms of getting credit for backlinks. And so when I see any results at all, I'm like, okay, Google is putting you in the link graph. We can kind of diagnose that, and that's a good thing. Or no, you're kind of not in the link graph, so we need to figure out why. Do backlinks for my URL exist? So instead of just looking at, does my site have backlinks? Does this specific page have backlinks? And this is a bit more sketchy, but it tends to work for sites that have been around for a little bit, where you do quoted string on the exact URL and minus the pages of the site, so you get to the whole URL appearing on other sites, which is typically in links. And what that tends to look like is, here we have the quoted search, the must-have plus operator, the quoted search on the whole URL, and minus the site it's on. And then we find pages that reference it, that link to it. So my YouTube page, this Hunter.io page, this legit.com page. So it's a way of finding out, pages, does this page itself have external backlinks in Google? So that's another cool trick that's page specific instead of domain specific.
Nice.
So with simple diagnostics, you want to continue to develop these, and there's a lot of them you can do. The search operators are many, and when you start to use tools like analytics and Ahrefs and Google Trends and other tools, you can continue to develop these, quick and easy diagnostics. And I highly recommend that you make like a glossary of them for reference. And you can build them out, and they can become a product for you. You could do a course on these types of tricks if you had a whole glossary of them. And so I really like these types of things, because when somebody asks me a question, I can hammer out a quick answer to say, do we need to go down this rabbit hole further, or no, we should probably look at something else as the issue. And so I like these types of things. So do you guys use this type of stuff in your daily practice?
I won't say daily, but I do have a OneNote workbook just of operators that I use for everything.
And this wasn't vertical marketing at all, but I'm pretty sure the pro tip that's coming out on Friday is about a search operator that I use.
Nice.
So we'll let that one hang in suspense until Friday.
Yeah, and so, I recommend if you're new to SEO that you get a bunch of these types of things under your belt, practice them, get used to them, because they just kind of make you look good when you're sitting with a client and a client says, well, what about this page? Does it have backlinks? Do you really want to, fire up, Ahrefs right then and there and dive into that? Or do you just want to hammer out a quick answer? Both have their merits, but it's good to know some of these fundamental diagnostic techniques.
Well, it's also good to compare and contrast too. Like when you're wholly dependent upon, something else to give you data, you're really kind of stuck to what they give you. And if you have other means, then it expands what you can and can't do.
Well, yeah, and Ahrefs saying we've discovered these backlinks, and Google saying, "Nuh-uh, I'm not giving you credit for shit." Those are different states from different, sources, and it's good to compare. Let's see. Are there any questions?
Hang on, pulling that up now. Let's see. Are there any affordable backlink services that can be recommended for low keyword competition?
Well, yeah, there's SEO autopilot, and there's all the drip feed links, and there are PBNs. I know SIA is big on PBNs. There's all of your Web 2.0s and brand citations. There's a ton of directories out there. There's press releases. People have their favorites. I'd say it's largely dependent upon what your goal is. If you eventually want to be like a PageRank 8 equivalent magnitude website, you can't pay for your backlinks to get there. You have to go viral. If you're dealing with a small mom and pop business, then, going to that next level of being like a medium-sized business, you probably could pay to do. So, you really have to look at what's your budget, where are you trying to get, and then figure out how you can grow over time and what that would look like budget-wise and link growth-wise on a month-by-month basis to make your plan. And then you have to say, is that a worthwhile use of our resources and time? And if so, then cool. If you're comfortable with the risks, cool. If not, then, maybe do something else with the opportunity. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Nothing to add for me. Clint?
No, I'm kind of right down there with you too.
So let's see. Next question.
There's a question about what somebody should do on the Google update, and I think you touched on this at the beginning. So I would say if they missed the beginning, watch the beginning. But then also there are lots of posts on this in IMG, and you do your update Mondays. I would reference that.
Yep. Somebody asks, what's the most important part in on-page SEO? I would say to measure the competition. Find out how you're different than your higher ranking competitors.
I would agree with that statement. Or if you want just a real pithy one, your meta title.
Yep. Are there any resources we can learn more in detail about how to find these parameters other than hitting up one of you guys? Well, yeah, there's a lot of YouTube videos and blog posts on the Google parameters, but really the important part is that you practice with them. So their existence and documentation out on the web does you no good if you haven't practiced with them and you haven't learned, what use cases you can trust yourself with versus the things that, I'm not sure I quite get that. I probably shouldn't use it in front of a client. So key thing there is practice.
Yeah, Ted, if you just do the search, Google search operators, the first thing that'll come up will be the webmaster guidelines, or I think developer support actually, and Google lists maybe 8 to 10 on that page. And then there's several good resources. I think one's called like googleguide.com or something like that. And it lists a whole bunch of the search operators. I'm probably on that site once a quarter, just looking at like, what was that search operator again? And going in and playing around with it. But it's a lot of fun. I love doing it.
There's also Glenn Allstop has a course too, and I think he goes over like 15 or 20 of them as part of his site audits. It is real useful.
Somebody asked the question, any business ideas with the world heading for recession? Well, for starters, just look around you. Look at what businesses are open. Look at what businesses are kind of disaster proof, what businesses thrive in this environment, and try to add some of those businesses to your portfolio because they'll make you more resilient in the future.
I learned a new term for stocks called FANG Plus, but it's Facebook, Amazon, Google, Netflix, and Microsoft. And all of those, their stocks are going up, all of them. So all the FANGs are going up is the idea. And that should be indicative of where you might want to be. And since we're all digital marketers, that's a happy spot for us. That means that there's money to be made in what we're doing.
Yeah. And, a lot of the opportunity on the ground now is helping small to mid-sized businesses pivot, helping them get the word out that they have, new COVID policies for operating and just letting their communities know that they are in fact open and offering service. And surprisingly, SEO shops are terrible at this. They're terrible at letting their customers and communities know that they can help. And, another great thing is early on, I found that hand sanitizer was like sold out everywhere. And it's like, well, how can I get my bottle of hand sanitizer? Well, we're SEOs. We are great at finding websites that have shitty SEO. And if you can find those websites that still have hand sanitizer in stock when they should be sold out, that A, solves your problem of where to get hand sanitizer, but B, imagine how much business that website that hasn't sold out of the product yet has been losing all along because of bad SEO. Imagine the amazing email you could write to that business, not just to help them sell out of hand sanitizer, they can do that already, but to get the rest of their online portfolio in shape so they can sell out when those things need to sell out. So there's a lot of opportunity here if you can get creative, and there's a lot of good you can do by helping those businesses. You guys have any tips?
Yeah, that's about it. I think that also covers the questions too.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank everyone, and I want to remind you to please subscribe to the channel and also subscribe to SEO This Week. If you're not watching that show, you're crazy. It's a great show. Highly recommend you do it. And check out IMG. It's a great community, and we'll see you next week.
Take care.